Hello, everyone, and welcome to the September OFA webinar, Improving Economic Stability for TANF Families by Engaging Non-Custodial Parents in Employment Services. Now, without further ado, I'd like to turn the webinar over to James Butler, Family Assistance Program Specialist for the Office of Family Assistance. James?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Improving Economic Stability for TANF Families by Engaging Non-Custodial Parents in Employment Services. We are excited to have a panel of expert presenters to discuss this critical topic with you today. As Steve said, I am James Butler from the Office of Family Assistance, and I will be facilitating today's webinar. So when TANF families receive reliable child support payments, they are more likely to experience economic stability due to a more consistent and predictable flow of income each month. However, in order for non-custodial parents to provide such support, they need steady income through long-term livable wage employment. As you know, many NCPs struggle with a variety of employment barriers that can make obtaining and maintaining stable employment a little difficult. Research has demonstrated that employment programs for low-income NCPs have far-reaching effects improving family outcomes for the NCP and their child or children receiving support, as well as the custodial family. For today's webinar, our presenters will describe the value of supporting non-custodial parents with employment services, specific approaches for doing so, and ideas on how TANF programs can effectively partner with such programs to improve economic stability and family well-being. Some of our learning objectives for today is that you will consider how reliable child support and stable employment of a non-custodial parent can improve economic stability and family well-being for TANF families. Review various approaches for non-custodial parent engagement in employment services and desired outcomes. Explore some possible strategies for creating strong partnerships with employment programs that specialize in serving non-custodial parents. Throughout the presentation today, you will have an opportunity to ask questions through the chat box in the bottom left corner of your screen. We encourage you to ask questions, and if your question is for a specific presenter or program, please be sure to specify that. If we don't get to everyone's questions, we will provide a Q&A that will appear on the PRTA website, along with a transcript and audio recording for today's webinar. During the webinar, there will also be a series of polling questions that will appear on your screen. Please answer each by clicking on the radio button next to your selected response. Doing so will not only help us guide the discussions, but will also share additional information that may inform our practice. Okay, we're going to first hear from Alvin Tafoya, who is the Program Administrator for the Colorado Parent Employment Project at Jefferson County Department of Human Services. Alvin has worked in human services for over 10 years. Within the Jefferson County Department of Human Services, he assists and helps to oversee the Responsible Fatherhood Program, which includes the Colorado Parent Employment Program. He's passionate about creating collaborations across programs to ensure that strength-based holistic services for families with a special emphasis on services for non-custodial parents. After hearing from Alvin, we will hear from Ronald Nix, who is the grant monitor in the Maryland Child Support Enforcement Administration. Ron has served as the grant monitor with Maryland Department of Human Services Child Support Administration since 2012. He's also served as Maryland's State Fatherhood Coordinator and monitored Maryland's Responsible Fatherhood Demonstration Grant from 2009 through 2011. And I will turn it over now to Steve.
Thanks, James. So as you know, we encourage an interactive audience for our webinars. So we want to pose a few poll questions to you throughout the event to give you the opportunity to weigh in. You'll be able to indicate your responses directly on your screen. The first polling question: does your TANF program currently have a strong partnership with a program that provides employment services specifically tailored for non-custodial parents? So, does your program have a partnership with a program that provides employment services specifically tailored for non-custodial parents? We'll give you a chance to weigh in there. So it looks like the majority of the audience does not have that partnership at the moment, so hopefully this particular webinar will be of use to you in developing those partnerships in the future. So let's move on with the presentation. Now I will turn it over to Alvin Tafoya, Program Administrator at Jeffco. Alvin?
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Alvin Tafoya. I just want to give a little context. Over the last 10 years, I've had the privilege of being the program manager over TANF, CCAT, Workforce, Child Support Services. But within that context, I have always been part of the fatherhood program as well. And so I just wanted to add that to my bio. If you want to go ahead and hit the next slide. So today I would like to share with you how we approach 2-gen case management here in Jefferson County. What you see here is COPEP. It's Colorado Parent Employment Grant. It's basically the CSPED grant that came out 5 years ago. The Responsible Fatherhood Program. We have been part of Responsible Fatherhood, like I stated, for about 10 years. We started out as the Nurturing Fatherhood Program grant that came out 10 years ago. 5 years ago, we saw the value in continuing to serve fathers. Actually, our director, Lynn Johnson, saw the value of that, and you know, we certainly advocated for that. And so 5 years later, we're still at the table serving more fathers than ever. So problem-solving core is where we work with non-custodial parents within the contempt of court process to help them to move forward as well. And so that's where we're at in regard to that one. Next slide, please. So our philosophy in terms of working with non-custodial parents would be assess, stabilize, progress, and transition. It's basically a process that we utilized in TANF for custodial parents, and we saw it valuable in working with non-custodial parents as well. And so if you want to go to the next slide. So Jeffco staff utilize a strength-based and barrier-based approach in order to truly understand the customer's strengths and barriers. You know, we're really looking at a whole person approach with the goal of leveraging their strengths, minimizing, reducing, or removing their barriers. We think it's critical to talk to an individual about their strengths instead of coming at it from what are your barriers, what's holding you down, because a lot of these individuals, they do come with a lot of strengths. They just have some situations in their life that they're trying to work through. So we think that that approach is the best approach. Next slide, please. In the stabilization period, we assist the customer to move from a crisis state to a stabilized state of being by leveraging their strengths. minimizing, reducing, or removing barriers through the use of these three categories that we provide are treatment services. So if they identify that they're having some mental health issues, DV issues, substance abuse, medical, dental, vision, if they identify that they have some literacy, financial literacy issues, we provide tax preparation. We also provide parenting and co-parenting classes. These are all considered treatment services. And then we also provide supportive services, which I kind of call cash equivalent. These are the services that help individuals get to and from our appointments or to work or to court. So that would be bus passes, bus tickets, food, rental assistance in some cases, household needs, supervised visits, work supports, etc. So, that's our supportive services piece there. Then obviously, because fatherhood, COPAP, and problem-solving court are all auxiliary caseloads under the Child Support Services Program, we really work with them around the child support services pieces, the enforcement remedies that have been, imposed on them and are in many cases prohibiting them from moving forward. We assist them with driver's license reinstatement. We'll even pay the reinstatement fee, professional occupational license reinstatement, modification of child support, reduction of TANF arrears payments, forgiveness of TANF debt, judicial navigation, parenting time, to include mediation services, and obviously employment services. I guess the key thing here is we came at it 10 years ago from an employment standpoint. We learned that these individuals have other challenges in their life that need to be stabilized before we can engage them towards employment. And so that's kind of where we're at today in terms of our process. Next slide, please. So within this quadrant, the customer who is in crisis is now in a position in which he or she can begin to take firm steps towards their personal and professional goals, i.e. employment, education, educational attainment, training, more time spent with child or children, better relationship with custodial parent, stable housing, current consistent financial support, and medical support for self and children, etc. Next slide, please. And then the transition quadrant. The goal is to assist the customer to truly become self-reliant or self-sufficient, ultimately free of government assistance. At this point of the relationship, the customer is well on their way of meeting their own definition of success, which is critical, while meeting our definition of success, which has evolved over the years to be able to support oneself and support his or her children. That was a lesson learned over a period of time. For those of you who are familiar with child support, it's been, here's your child support order, let us know when you get a job. Today's world, it's, here's a child support order, we understand you're not employed or unemployed, how can we support you? And so that philosophy shift has been real critical in our success and the success of the customers we're serving. So however, even in this step, we continue to provide job retention services and continue to provide treatment services if needed to ensure the customer is firmly secure in their path. And so I do want to state that all the supportive services and treatment services are sponsored by TANF funding. And so, just to kind of speak to that relationship there, that's what we do here in Jefferson County. Next slide, please. Kind of our case management model. Wanted to give you a little context of where our referrals are coming from, referral sources, how we research those referrals, our interview and assessment, a little bit redundant here, but we do a DV assessment with each of our non-custodial parents to ensure there's nothing going on there or actively going on that may prohibit us from providing services to them. But at the end of the day, we do try to walk away with an action plan with each of our non-custodial parents, take some measurable steps towards their self-sufficiency. resources and referrals. I got some data and some data tracking, and then kind of speak to what 2Gen goals that we're striving for. Next slide, please. Referral source. Our referral process has taken many shapes over the years, and the bottom line is whatever process works for you and your program. For us, we use a variety of methods for referrals. We've opened it up really, obviously Microsoft email from various programs or programs out in the community, internally or externally. ACES, the acronym is Automated Child Support Enforcement Services. That's our database for child support cases in Colorado, so we can receive an email through them as well. Adobe Form Stacker is one of the tools that we've used in the past to track all of our referrals and services. I think it's a great tool. Our IT department felt like there was too much personal information on that particular platform, and so we had to make some shifts over the years away from Adobe Stacker. But if your county lets you use it, I think it's awesome. Obviously, direct phone calls from staff and or customers, and public walk-ins, word of mouth, so on and so forth. We get referrals everywhere. It started out with child support. We came to the conclusion that fathers are everywhere in our program, right? We deal with families. We can't have a family-centered approach if we're not serving the father of said family. And so that's kind of my mantra, which resulted in referrals from child welfare, the judicial system, FIC court, mediation services, obviously TANF, CCAP, and what's become a big player for us is Head Start. We have quite a few. In one of our sites, there's 400 families being served. When we went in and looked at the data, there was actually 100 custodial fathers who needed some help with fathering, parenting, co-parenting, so on and so forth. And so we serve them as well. And as you know, or may not know, families in Head Start are more than likely receiving TANF and CCAP, mainly because of the eligibility threshold, I think, is like 100% of federal poverty level. So we're all working together to wrap ourselves around families and support them however we can. Next slide, please. Earlier I talked about safety and how we research each referral. It's been through experience, but obviously through some of our grants, making sure that we do a DB assessment and then meeting with the non-custodial parents, talking to them, but not only just talking to them, reviewing the information we have access to, which is our ACES. Trails is really our child welfare database, and data access is our court record database. So we actually take the time to go in and check everything out to make sure that everything's on the up and up. We want to make sure that custodial parent and children are safe and that we're moving in a direction that is safe for all parties involved. Next slide, please. So again, the interview assessment and action plan is really kind of our case management model. As previously stated, each customer receives a strength-based, barrier-based assessment in order to determine next action steps. This process also includes a DB assessment as outlined by the Colorado Department of Human Services, CDHS, training and protocol to ensure safety of custodial parents and children. Upon completion of every interview and assessment, a conversation takes place with the customer and an action plan is developed. Conversations without actions usually don't yield much, so we try to get a commitment from the non-custodial parent about a certain action or actions that they're going to take to help move the process forward. A follow-up appointment is immediately scheduled, no more than 30 days out, depending on the circumstances, sometimes sooner, in order to review progress. We keep notes to keep and to ensure progression and ownership with the non-custodial parents, and supportive and treatment services are also provided as part of the plan in this step if we identify some particular needs that they need immediately to help get them out of crisis and stabilize them out. Next slide, please. Resource and referrals. So we have a plethora here. This started out as a three-legged stool, obviously the non-custodial parent right in the middle, trying to provide wraparound services. Our key players to start with were child support, fatherhood, co-PEP, and problem-solving court, and workforce, or WIOA, however you guys call it in your states. We identified these quadrants as the primary quadrants in which non-custodial parents need assistance over a period of time. So employment, we got basic needs, we got domestic violence, parenting time, counseling, we have mental and physical health, we have court and legal challenges. And what we did is that we invited all of our internal and external partners into our program and had a big meeting, and we set them all up in a room. We shared to them some of the challenges that we were seeing in terms of finding the resources to support non-custodial parents. And so what we did is we placed these big old placards on different walls, and we asked our partners, if you feel like you can provide this service, whether it's fee-for-service or for free, put your business card up there. And so that was kind of our little strategy to get people engaged, to find out who's engaged, who's willing to come to the table, who's willing to support us. And all these different programs came to the table. I won't go through each of them, but as you can see, we got plenty of partners out in our community. We know that we can't do this alone, and so we partner with anyone and everyone in our community, in-house and, externally, to help support our non-custodial parents. And often at times they may not even be located within our county, but that's okay. We want to partner with you. Next slide, please. A little bit of data tracking for July and August. As you can see, we get plenty of referrals. We got Head Start. We get individuals from the Department of Corrections who are recently released or contacting us through parole probation offices, COPEP, that's our Colorado Parent Employment Grant, Child Support Services, CSS. CYF is our Child Welfare, Children, Youth, and Families Child Welfare Program. FIT Court is Judicial FIT Court, also known as Drug Court. Word of mouth from friends, other human service programs. JPPs are Jeffco Prosperity Projects, in which we're working with families in Head Start. Our goal is to help families from Head Start through graduation. So it's a real big undertaking, but fathers have to be in the picture. Non-custodial parents have to be in the picture if we're going to say we're providing family-centered approach. Let's see, we got probation, contempt court, recovery court, work release, creative treatment, and we put flyers and we do constant contact out to all of our colleagues out in the community as well. Next slide, please. Kind of the overall numbers here in terms of services. And so individual customers, we served about 220 customers with child support cases, total appointments. So some of these numbers seem high, but you can have an individual who has a individual coaching session twice a month, is showing up to parenting classes twice a week. And so these numbers, I want my staff to get credit for every touch that we have with every customer. And so we track it accordingly. Class attendance, average class attendance, coaching, this is individual coaching, parenting education, system navigation, judicial navigation, employment referrals, employment readiness, and referrals from other agencies. So as you can see, the ones that are engaged are in multiple categories. Some of these guys are one-time hit. They walk in, they want to see what fatherhood's about. We let them know what we're about, and when they're ready to engage with us, they come back, and they do come back when they're ready. So next slide, please. Supportive services, we always want to be good stewards of the money that we're spending in TANF. And so, we're always tracking who's receiving what. We provide Walmart, King Soopers cards, bus passes, bus tickets, and so we track it by the dollar amount as well so that I can make sure I stay within my budget. and everything is audit worthy from the county, state, or the federal level. So we have all that data tracked there. Next slide, please. So these are our 2-gen outcomes. Many of these are observed. We are trying to build a matrix to track all of these categories individually. A little bit challenging, but we are moving towards pre and post questionnaires so that we can firmly and confidently state that we're meeting each of these goals. But individual goals consist of increased confidence, increased parental capacity, decreased psychological distress, decreased parental depression. Those of you who are working with fathers, you'll hear the stories. I don't get to see my kids. I'm worried about them. I don't know what's going on with them. Custodial parent don't let me see them. I just want to be part of the process now. They admit their faults in the past. You know, they're working towards moving forward. And so, you know, we hear those stories all the time. Family goals, obviously, it's always about the family, custodial, non-custodial, and children. Increased emotional well-being, increased financial well-being, increased medical well-being. These happen to be the goals of child support services as well. Our mission is to ensure that both parents provide financial, medical, and emotional support to children. And so the emotional support has always been that kind of ambiguous goal. How do you get there? But we've been able to accomplish it through fatherhood and co-parenting and things of that nature. So child goals, obviously, increase confidence, increase cognitive and emotional development, increase emotional, financial, medical well-being, and decrease psychological distress. And so when we do a family-centered approach, all the members in that family benefit from that approach. Next slide. I've always loved this saying, it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men, by Frederick Douglass. However, in order to break the fatherless cycle, we must also invest in the fathers in our community so their offspring will understand the importance of a two-parent relationship regardless of marital status. And that's really what we're trying to do with our 2-gen model here in Jefferson County. And we believe that we're doing that with each family that we touch. And that concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions out there for me?
Yeah.
We'll hold until the end of the program.
Okay. Sounds good.
Sure.
Yeah, we have a couple on deck for you, Alvin, so we'll get those to you shortly.
Yes.
All right, so the next poll question: how does your TANF program currently connect with programs that provide employment services for non-custodial parents? And your options are: we do not currently connect with such programs. We inform TANF participants of available employment services for NCPs. We partner with such programs by doing cross-referrals and other strategic collaborative activities. So let's get your feedback on that. Again, remember you can respond directly on the screen, and we'll share the results in a second. Right, so a pretty interesting distribution, maybe a little less than half aren't currently connecting, but a good number of you are, so we look forward to additional information and questions from all of you moving forward. Now we'll turn the presentation over to Ron Nix. Ron?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the grants monitor with the Special Projects Unit with the Maryland Child Support Administration. Next slide. Since 2006, the Maryland Department of Human Services has provided employment services to non-custodial fathers. The Winning Fathers program is located in the Baltimore County Detention Center to those who have active and open cases and who are within 120 days of release. The Parents as Partners and Young Fathers Employment Program both operate out of local departments of social services. All three programs are funded by FIA, the Family Investment Administration, at an annual cost of $250,000. The NCP Mini Grant Employment Program was launched in 2016, and it operates out of Western Maryland and the Mid-Shore. The Family Investment Administration also funds those programs at the cost of $250,000 annually. And the Step Up program, supporting, training, and employing parents, is a pilot legislative required program in Baltimore City serving unemployed and underemployed non-custodial parents. The Step Up program was launched in 2016. Next slide. Some of the services provided by the Young Fathers Employment Program include job readiness, federal bonding, expungement services, interviewing techniques, self-directed job search, employment referrals, job placement, and retention. Each program site only serves that one particular county, and each program also relies heavily upon partnerships with local service providers. What's also interesting is that each of the programs have an aftercare component, which means that once individuals have gone through the program, they're able to continue to meet and look at co-parenting. They're able to look at activities for their children and plan special events where dads are able to connect with their children on a regular basis. The next slide. The Mini Grant Employment Program provides limited wraparound services, but it primarily focuses upon job readiness, job placement, retention, and vocational training referrals. Local child support officers are eligible to apply for the mini grant funds annually. The CSA also requires what we call a regional approach, which means that once an application is submitted, there must also be a neighboring jurisdiction that will also be part of that grant. What we're trying to do is eliminate the silos and almost have no wrong door, where if you have an open and active child support case, you're able to get assistance. Again, community partnerships are critical to our efforts. Next slide. Each year we've been able to see improvement in our outcomes. The number enrolled had increased by 23 in FY17, number employed increased by 41 from last year. But we're also able to look at return on investment. And we've also noticed an increase in partnerships with different employers as well as temp agencies in those areas that are being served. Training opportunities have also increased for those individuals who have child support cases that are incarcerated. What we've been able to do is have, for example, a number of individuals go through the flagger training and certification while they are incarcerated and able to find employment in Maryland, Delaware, and Virginia. And they get certification as well. Next slide. CSA was able to partner with the University of Maryland School of Social Work really to review our program data and get an idea of our effectiveness. It helped also to give some credibility to what we were doing so that we could certainly share that with those who are stakeholders and executive level staff, as well as showing us some of the blind spots in the program that we may have. Next slide. Here we see the percent employed and the median earnings before program enrollment as well as after program enrollment. both enrollment and earnings increase the year after participants enrolled in the program. Part of that increase may very well be due to an improved economy. Next slide. The number of payments increased by 16% on this slide, and we see higher wages produced higher support collections. Next slide. After enrollment, some participants earned less money, some showed stable earnings, and yet others showed an increase in wages. What's most telling is that despite low wages, NCPs still paid 40% of their income toward child support payments. The more participants earned, the more likely they were to comply with their child support orders. Next slide. We also included the link to our Young Fathers Employment Program report. You'll be able to look at the executive summary, program effectiveness, the background, methods, and data sources. So please, we recommend and encourage you to visit that link. Next slide. Step Up is a legislative required program sponsored by Maryland Delegate Samuel I. Rosenberg in the 41st District. And there are a number of other partners as well, legislative partners, the Maryland Department of Labor, Licensing and Regulations, the Family Investment Administration, the Maryland Department of Social Services, and the Circuit Courts of Baltimore City. And there are several other partners that provide additional services as well. Next slide. The target population for the Step Up pilot program are Baltimore City non-custodial parents with established orders and non-custodial parents in the establishment phase. Services provided to Step Up participants include employment, job skills assessment, and assistance with employment-related needs. The big difference between Step Up and our other employment programs is the cancellation of permanently state-owed arrears. Participants are only allowed to be involved in the program also for 1 year. The next slide. This chart shows the number of non-custodial parents receiving SNAP services through the state of Maryland. You may ask, why do we partner with the Family Investment Administration? And it's largely because of the number of NCPs that receive SNAP benefits. In other words, we saw a lot of overlapping with services. Baltimore City has nearly 10,000 NCPs receiving SNAP benefits of a caseload of 60,000 in FY16. Next slide. Some of the Step Up training programs include warehousing, materials handling, freight forwarding, welding, forklift certification, and construction. Wraparound services include the GED classes, expungement services, soft skills trainings, and college credit classes. Next slide. I want to close with a story because I think this young man reflects what many of us see from time to time. After years of incarceration, Harry was released from the Maryland Department of Corrections with open child support cases waiting to greet him. Shortly after his release in August of 2016, Harry showed up at the RISE office and desperate and fully aware of his condition and circumstances. The RISE work will quickly learn that Harry's years of incarceration and checkered work history would make it difficult for him to find work quickly. But Harry was determined as well as the worker, and he laid his pride aside and he was able to find a job at a neighborhood fast food outlet. And Harry's dedication, his dependability paid off, and he was promoted to a shift manager. But yet Harry really wanted to become a licensed barber. And since that time, he has gotten on the career track of becoming a licensed barber. But more importantly, he has spent more time with his children, and his state-owed arrears has been slashed over $2,000. Harry represents an example of what can happen when we begin to invest in fathers and NCPs who all too often find no way out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Contact information there, and we will give a poll question before we go into Q&A. I wanted to find out what type of employment services are available for the non-custodial parents connected with your TANF families. Some of the options include job readiness support, examples of resume writing or job search, vocational and or educational services, post-employment support, job retention and career advancement, financial assistance such as transportation vouchers or payment for work-related expenses, and or guidance resolving child support issues, modifying orders, reinstating driver's licenses. So we will give you the opportunity to weigh in here. Again, remember you can respond directly on the screen and share the responses shortly. All right, there's a good distribution across the options. So it's interesting to see the services that are available, and hopefully you have obtained some ideas of other services that you might be able to develop partnerships for. So now let's go into the Q&A portion of the webinar. I know a few of you have sent questions already, and remember that you can continue to do that by entering them into the chat box. So we'll start first with a question for Alvin, and that is, how is your program funded, and is the program voluntary?
So how the program is funded, I actually have a different PowerPoint for that, but it consists of a combination of child support dollars and county-only dollars and TANF dollars. And so when I took over the program 4 or 5 years ago, we only had one fatherhood individual that we were paying with the county-only dollars. And after I took a look at the federal PIQ in terms of what's allowable to pay and cover, I was able to leverage that, work with the state office, and turn that one position into two. If you understand the child support dynamics, for every $3 you spend, you get $2 back. And so I was able to turn basically $60,000 into $180,000. And then TANF program kicked in. They're kicking in right now about $48,000 for supportive services, supportive and treatment services, and then other sources would be from community partners and or free services that are funded through other types of grants or whatnot. So I hope that was helpful.
Yes, thanks. Ron, we actually just got a similar question for you in terms of is participation voluntary or required, and any funding information you can share?
Yes, participation, again, is voluntary. It's not mandatory. In terms of funding, again, funding is from FIA. So that's in the amount of $250,000 for the young fathers and $255,000 for the mini grant. The reason we call it the mini grant program is because when we first started it, we only had funding for about maybe 9 months. So, of course, that has since changed. We're now able to fund it for the entire 12-month period, but we decided to keep that name nonetheless. But anyway, that's where our funding stream comes from.
Okay, thank you.
Just real quick, I want to state that it is voluntary in Jefferson County as well. In problem-solving court, they do strongly encourage them to participate with us, but it's not court-ordered.
Right. I think these questions are for both of you, so you can take turns. There's some interest in knowing information about the retention level of participants in your programs, sort of the average duration that you work with those individuals on average or so, and if there's any particular criteria that participants need to meet before participating.
I'll go ahead and start. For Jefferson County, there is no time limit in which a non-custodial parent can participate in our programs. I would state that each situation is unique, so we could have individuals involved in our program for 3 months, some for 9, some for a year. We have individuals who are completely independent, of free and independent government benefits, have parenting plans, paying their child support, but they come back for our fatherhood men's group circle where they talk about their current challenges, and we have individuals that are they're lifers in our program.
Yeah, I would agree with Alvin. We too have no time limit per se. I guess average may be about maybe a year or so roughly, but at the same time, the door is open to whenever you have a need, you can come back. Obviously, a number of guys have lost employment, and they make their way back because they know it's a place where they can get assistance. So it could very well go on well past a year into 2 or 3 years. It just depends upon the kind of relationship they have with the program.
In terms of a requirement to participate, there's no real requirement, but there is an expectation of engagement, especially if we're beginning to provide treatment services or supportive services. We really want them to own some of that. And what that looks like is making sure they're showing up to our weekly fatherhood classes, engaging in the work groups. If part of their action plan is to, go get copies of court orders regarding parenting plans, we ask them to follow up and follow through on some of their action steps. We wouldn't necessarily cut them out, but we might limit paying for particular support services or treatment services if they're not engaged in working towards some of the things that they need to overcome.
Okay, thank you. Alvin, there's a question for you. Do you have any information on your success rates for getting individuals securely employed and becoming independent?
So we do have some data, and there was a period of time in which our fatherhood staff were carrying the caseloads of individuals, and our average case managers are averaging between 65 and 70% current consistent support. When we were tracking those caseloads separately, they were performing at about a 5 or 10% higher. Obviously, a lot of the individuals that we were working with may have already been employed and they maintained employment. But what as part of that success of that individual, it was establishing a parenting plan, engaging in that parenting plan with the children, and engaging in the co-parenting plan relationship with custodial parents. So we don't look at employment as the only measure. We look at it as one of the measures.
That's a good point to piggyback off of that because, we've seen the same thing. Clearly, once a gentleman or woman begins to work and take care of their child support responsibilities, that the role of being a parent tends to increase. All of our aftercare components have that, where fathers and families are engaged in activities, and it's always a good outcome when dads and moms are paying. But what you're really looking at is a connection. being made between the children and the parent. So we stress that heavily as well.
Thanks. There's a couple for you, Ron. You mentioned funding through FIA. The question is, what is FIA exactly? And is there, sort of a follow-up to an earlier question, is there a reason why the courts or other agencies do not mandate participation in your program?
FIA means Family Investment Administration here in the state of Maryland, so they're the ones who handle TANF dollars and SNAP and all of those kinds of programs. So that's what they do when we talk about FIA, Family Investment Administration. Sorry about that. And I'm sorry, so there was another part to that question?
Yes, there was a question about the participation and wondered why it was not mandated by courts.
That's an excellent question. To my knowledge, again, there may be a referral made. Whether or not it's mandatory is another thing altogether, because there may be obviously consequences for those who fail to comply. But that's pretty much what I can say about that.
All right. For both of you, are your programs specifically limited to non-custodial fathers, or are non-custodial mothers invited to participate as well?
Our program mothers are invited as well. Yes.
So Jefferson County, we don't care about the gender, custodial, non-custodial. They're both invited. And I think the dynamics that we've learned over a period of time is an individual, male or female, could be a custodial parent in their current relationship and a non-custodial parent in their former relationship. So it's pretty dynamic, I guess would be the word, in terms of that use of custodial, non-custodial. But there have been instances in which where we're working with the non-custodial parent in the Nurturing Father 24/7 Dad's co-parenting curriculum piece, where they've actually invited the custodial parent in to listen in on those classes, and that kind of begins that little relationship on the co-parenting piece. And as a result, we've actually moved towards a co-parenting standalone class so that we can provide that extra layer of service, because what we've learned is you can help a non-custodial parent get a court-ordered parenting plan. You can educate him on how to enforce it, but if the custodial parent really wants to keep that child from him, she can. And the only way to overcome that is to mend that relationship, that co-parent relationship, and get them to that place where they can trust at that level, what's in the best interest of the child or children.
Thank you. This question is for Ron. Is there additional basic needs support available for fathers in an effort to build their capacity to ensure initiatives are sustainable?
Yes, and then again, part of that is through the aftercare component, where the men are able to meet with the worker who operates the program, runs the program, and able to address other needs that person may have. It may be in terms of gift cards. It may be in terms of clothing. It may be in terms of giving them support to attend a school meeting. It just kind of varies, but it's clear that they are there to assist them in their efforts to become a better parent, whatever that may require.
Thank you. Let's see, I think this is for both of you. If you could talk a little bit more about any job retention services that you offer.
I'm sorry, can you state that again? I apologize.
No problem. The question was, can you talk a little bit about any job retention services that you may offer?
One of the things with one of the programs that we have for the Young Fathers Employment Program is the relationship that the worker develops with the employer, i.e. The employer may understand this individual's particular situation or case, or circumstance, with the caveat that if you run into a problem, if there's an issue, please talk with me, give me a call, let me know. So there's that kind of personal involvement with the worker, with the NCP and the employer to kind of help prevent this person from losing that employment. But that's kind of what most of them are aiming at in terms of retention, because quite frankly, that's a piece that's critical, and you want to do the best you can to keep this man or woman employed. So they will often do whatever they have to try to help in that process.
So Jefferson County, we do something similar. I like to say that my non-custodial parent employees are life coaches and job coaches, because they have to kind of help them out with some of their life challenges, and their job pieces as well. And like previously stated, if they know they have some triggers along, my boss is telling me X, Y, and Z, and I feel like punching them in the face, it's like, hey, you got that trigger, pause, pick up the phone, let me talk to you, let me let me counsel you on this matter and see if we can get a better outcome, instead of you getting into a verbal altercation with your employer and losing your job. And so we do some of that, but we also provide supportive services as well. Bus pass, monthly bus pass. If they need to get some upskills through the workforce center, maybe a CDL license or a hazardous material license attached to the CDL, we'll help them with that so they can make more money, or help them purchase work clothes and equipment, things of that nature. So definitely yes.
Great, thank you. There's a question for both of you. What strategies can you offer to begin conversations with TANF, SNAP, and child support? The questioner says that their departments don't collaborate or communicate much. And I want to add on to that, not only beginning the conversation, but how do you maintain that relationship, that partnership, and keep it sustainable?
When I came on board, I was fortunate in that those relationships had already been established. And quite frankly, it does require a lot of dialogue, being open and candid with each other, and hoping that they see your vision, and that is trying to help non-custodial parents and families become employed. How can we best help and serve children? That becomes the foundation upon which I would imagine we were able to build upon, and it's massaging those relationships and keeping them going and being open and honest with each other, and trying to hopefully aim and go the same direction. But that may take a minute in places where that's not the norm or the practice. But again, we're fortunate here in Maryland in that there is that degree of collaboration and communication, and it starts small. I would recommend there and try to build one in.
I agree with everything just stated. Jefferson County, and I think Colorado, has been involved in fatherhood probably for the last 30 years that I'm aware of. One of our governors actually initiated it some time ago. However, in Jefferson County, if you're asking, how do you start that conversation, I think it's just beginning to have those conversations with your peers. It's beginning to get buy-in from your leadership and maybe your boss, and then trickling that down to everyone. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the successes that help sell future success. And so, kind of the story that the gentleman shared, my colleague shared about helping a non-custodial parent, well, the reality is, what we've learned, at least in child support, is that when a non-custodial parent becomes gainfully employed and begins to pay his or her child support, typically it's higher than their TANF amount. And so that's typically one of the number one reasons why people fell off of TANF, was because they started receiving regular child support that was higher than what their TANF grant was. You said TANF, SNAP, and what was the other program?
Child support.
Yeah, I mean, child support, we're at the table. I think if your leadership is developing the divisions, you know, for us, it was child support, TANF, CCAP, and workforce. So coupling those programs together, housing them together, having them sit on the same management team, and strategizing long-term together had the benefit of helping us to grow our program in relationship with our partners. And so, you know, that's all part of the strategy. But I do believe it has to come from kind of what you guys are doing here today, the feds kind of stimulating the conversation. Hopefully the state's systems will start stimulating the conversation, and then at the local level, the programs that are actually boots on the ground are having those conversations and starting their programs up.
You know, to piggyback off of that, it's also about getting your story out. How do you craft this thing in such a way that others are able to see what it is you actually do and the significance of it? We have, for example, a quarterly newsletter that came out. I mean, you know, and what we've managed to do with that is get a snapshot of those programs and how families and fathers are doing well, how they're connecting, different events that are going on. You know, some would call it fluff, but quite frankly, it is also designed for it to go up the chain and for others to see and get an idea of what it is we're doing. In other words, how do we help push and keep this effort before people who make decisions and policymakers? So, you know, I don't know if it's a one-pager, but some way of getting your story out so that others would begin to see what it is you're aiming at and what it is you're doing. And hopefully, as indicated by my colleague, get their buy-in. And, you know, it's going to be a slow and hard push in some cases.
Awesome. Thank you, Ron. We have a couple. So first one is for Ron. Step-up program, you mentioned that compliant NCPs can earn cancellation of permanently assigned state arrears. How did you arrange or set up this process?
The state of Maryland has something called Payment Incentive Program, PIP, and PIP is designed for those who pay at least a full year of their court-ordered child support order, 50% of their arrears are eliminated. If they pay another 12 months, then it forgives it all together. So that's one of the programs that helps eliminate or reduce the arrears, but also it's a law. So we have to reduce those arrears.
All right. Well, thank you, Ron. For Alvin, how do you help non-custodial parents address barriers that may not be related to education or job skills, such as substance use, abuse, mental illness, transportation, other unrelated factors to jobs or education?
So, you know, having the benefit of being the program manager over TANF for a period of my tenure, what I did here with the fatherhood program was pretty much replicate what we did with TANF custodial parents. When, you know, in my presentation we talk about treatment services, we do help provide domestic violence, substance abuse, any and other type of treatment service that's needed. DV, we've paid for guys to get some counseling regarding DV. We don't turn anybody away. We try to help to the degree in which we can, because we do believe that by removing some of those barriers, it's going to help reduce their stress in their world and help them get to a place where they can begin to take steps towards going back to school, becoming employed, engaging with the custodial parent, engaging with the children. I mean, if somebody has a substance abuse problem, custodial parent knows about it. she's not going to let him see the children. But if she starts seeing him change and she knows that he's getting services, there's a, we'll approach it from a safety approach. Certainly it might start out with supervised visitation, graduated in 6 months to unsupervised, and then maybe 6 months later, overnights, whatever it takes, however long it takes, we want to help provide those supports. And we have partners in the community that'll do it for free or reduced cost. And so it's just about building those relationships.
Great, thanks, Alvin. We have a attendee from Virginia who mentions that court fines are a big challenge there, and asks, does your program address paying for court fines?
So we won't pay, to the best of my knowledge, we've never paid anybody else's court fines. We have paid for reinstatement of their driver's license, like $90 in Colorado. And actually it was a result of us taking their license in many cases. But what we will do is, because we know some of these individuals that are transitioning out of the Department of Corrections, we know how much they're paying in terms of how much they got to pay towards restitution, how much they got to pay, to live in their unit. We know that there's a challenge there, and a lot of these guys, they take the first job they can get because it's a requirement of their probation, and so they're typically not going out and getting high wage jobs. But what we can do is modify that child support order based on their current ability to pay, and we can work with them on the arrears payment towards any back support. And so we can kind of get it to a place that it's reasonable. In many cases, we can send the custodial and non-custodial parent to mediation if they're willing to talk it out, and get orders down as low as $50 while they're trying to get back on their feet. And so that helps them pay towards their court fines and other challenges that they have going on.
Yes, in Maryland, we do not pay court fines.
Another question for both of you. When the non-custodial parents secured employment and their wages increased, I'm assuming their child support payments also increased. Did their payments increase gradually, and did you receive any pushback from these participants when their payments increased?
So the individuals who have gone through our fatherhood classes, responsible fatherhood classes, 24/7 dads, they get to a place where they understand, even if a modification takes place and their order goes up, they come to a place of understanding that they understand that whatever amount of money they're paying is a drop in the bucket compared to the relationship they now have with their children. And so we don't get a whole lot of pushback in the cases in which a modification occurs and the order goes up, because it's based on both parties' ability to, earning ability, and then overnights and who's paying for medical or child care. So we don't get a whole lot of pushback once they've been through the class and understand the dynamics of, the value of their contribution.
I know with the Step Up program, we do provide modification in their child support order to more or less right-size it, where it's in keeping with their income. We're not able to alter it outside of those two mechanisms. If it's imputed income, it may be gradually increased, but it's kind of where it is.
All right. I think we have two more questions, which I think are a good way to close the Q&A. They're similar, so we'll try to combine them a bit. The first question is, what do you find to be your biggest challenge with your program? And then the second question is, what types of challenges have you faced trying to sell your programs to the community or potential employers, just to external organizations. So if you could talk about the challenges in terms of outreach externally, and then if there is another larger challenge or issue that you face that's primary in your mind, if you wouldn't mind sharing that as well.
In terms of challenges, the Maryland Department of Child Support Enforcement recently changed our name. We're now Child Support Services. So with that comes a certain mindset. The enforcement piece has been dropped. Part of the challenge with some is that we are viewed there in the enforcement end instead of looking at the service end. So I think internally it's always about trying to educate and help staff see that we're moving from enforcement to services. A lot of stuff we're already doing, have been doing for years. So part of it is just helping people see that we're doing things a little different as it relates to working with non-custodial parents. So I would recommend that, or suggest that might be one challenge that is real. And probably not only here, but probably across the country when you look at enforcement versus services. And therein, I think, lies a challenge in some places. We're blessed here because folks have it. They got it. And then we're now moving more, obviously, along that way.
So I agree that there's always been kind of this dynamic of which your traditional child support worker may feel like the fatherhood worker isn't working as hard as they are. You know, having been over multiple programs, respectfully, Child Support Services is providing services, case words anywhere between 500, some counties 600, 700, 800, and now with 2JAN initiatives going on across the nation, we're really saying we want to provide services to both parties, the CP and the NCP, and that's a hard pill to swallow. You know, so that takes your 450 cases and turns it into 900 cases, 900 individuals that you're working with towards becoming self-reliant. And so that's a challenge in and of itself. And what we've done here in Jefferson County is we try to break those specialized cohorts or cases out, you know, in fatherhood, in problem-solving court, in COPEP, to try to minimize some of that so that we can ease into it versus try to change the whole system overnight, because it's just not functionally possible in today's world based on the limited technology we have. But that's huge. In terms of partners out in the community, we've never really had a challenge in terms of bringing partners to the table. We know the dynamics of how many non-custodial, so all of our partners see it. We don't even have to tell them. Like, let me give you an example. Truancy Court, Judge Alabiso, his observation was when he heard we had a fatherhood program, he wanted to know more. But his observation was when kids were showing up to court, which parent was there with them? The mother. When it's back to school night or parent-teacher conference night, who's with them? The mother. When my kids play football, and when I'm out there every night at the high school with the coaches watching the kids, who's with those kids? The mother. So it's not a hard sell when people are already seeing it in their programs. They're seeing it. Child welfare, who has the kids? The mother. Head Start, the mother. It's not, it's prevalent, and it's an epidemic, really. And we're just trying to do our piece to build and grow our program. And the other challenge for us is growing thoughtfully in a way that we can continue to provide support to all the different programs that are accessing our services and keep up with it financially so that we can continue to learn and grow with the need in the community.
Thank you very much. I want to thank both of you for answering so many questions. I think this is the most questions that I've experienced in a webinar, which I think is a testament to your presentation. So we appreciate you guys hanging in there with us. So
can I make one more statement real quick?
Absolutely.
I didn't have an opportunity to share this in my presentation, but about 3 months ago, the state of Colorado moved to full TANF pass-through. That means that moms on TANF receiving basic cash assistance and a child support payment comes in for $350, we're passing that full amount to the mom, the custodial parent. So we're putting more money in the family's hands instead of trying to recover money. However, the state has opted to help offset any losses that we've had in terms of incentives that we would normally receive to collect TANF for that particular month. So there is an agreement there. So, but you know, we really are becoming family first. We can collect our money later, but while a person's in crisis, the family's in crisis, we're going to pass through our money so that that custodial parent can be better suited and prepared financially to meet their family needs.
Thanks, Alvin. All right, so before I turn it over to James, we wanted to get one more chance to hear from the audience as a result of this webinar. For your final poll question, what is one thing you will do differently to improve coordination with programs that provide employment services for NCPs? And you can just enter your answer into the chat box, and we'll collect those and make them available as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to James for closing remarks. James?
Sure. Thanks again, everyone, for all of your questions, and thanks again to our great panel of presenters who provided a great wealth of information that we can all use to better support TANF families. Finally, we'd like to also expand our network and reach more people by directing interested colleagues from your local and state networks and agencies to our website, which you'll see before you on the screen. Just another reminder, a transcript and audio recording of today's webinar will be available shortly on the PRTA Network website, and that should be available within the next 2 weeks or so. We'd also like to hear from you about future webinar topics, so you can send your ideas by email to PRTA@icf.com. Just another reminder to provide your feedback through a brief survey that will pop up at the end of the webinar. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone who participated in today's webinar. Thanks again to our presenters. And again, please remember to provide your feedback after the webinar ends. Thanks to everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.